We're live. Go ahead and send an invite to Carrie. Carrie, there. Okay. There we go. Hi, how are you today?
Good morning. Well, it's morning for me.
Yeah, well, it's just now noon for
Yeah.
me, yeah. So for everyone that's joining us, my name is Patricia. I'm the founder of Crafter, and today we have Carrie joining us. She is a personal branding coach as well as an author, photographer, and a lot more. So I think we have a little bit of a connection delay, but in a moment we'll have Carrie introduce herself, tell us a little bit about what she does. Hey, Jackie. And we'll go from there. Hey, Jackie, thanks for coming. Thanks. Hi, Diane. Hi, Brandon. If you're new here, be sure to put your name in the comments and where you're from, and we'll say hi. And hopefully the connection goes. We'll see. Give it a moment here. Oh, no. Sometimes technology is not our friend, and this happens. So while we're waiting, a lot of times it's very important to, when you're marketing yourself, to make it more of a story and not so much based around a product. You want to very much tell a story about yourself that resonates with your audience, or you want to tell a story about how you got to where you are. And it's, let me see. Oh, Carrie's sending me another request. Let's see. Let's see. I'm going to see if, oh, I'm going to invite Carrie one more time. It looks like the connection was giving us a little bit of the business. And if you're new here, please say hello in the comments where you're watching from. Okay, let's try again. Is it working?
Wow. I'm not sure what was going on with that, but
I
Tuesday
think it
night.
froze on us.
Awesome. So happy to be here. And yeah, it's morning for me. I'm calling in from California.
Very
And
cool.
I consider myself bi-coastal. So, I love, yeah, I've spent a lot of time on the East Coast.
Oh,
Have a
very
lot of
cool.
friends and family there. So, yeah. So,
We're at on the East Coast. We're
uh,
over there.
my husband just retired from the military, and with the different schools that I've attended, we've moved 17 times in the past 20 years. So, I've done New York,
Yeah.
Florida,
Yeah.
Washington D.C. I grew up, went to high school in the Maryland area and went to Loyola for college for undergrad. So in Baltimore,
Very cool.
yeah,
Awesome. Well, I'm based out of Florida, Central Florida.
yeah.
So if you were over there, that's where I am. So.
I could use some Florida weather right now. It's a little chilly up here.
Well, and I know, and I feel so bad complaining because I'm a wuss with the cold because we're always used to it being the other end of the spectrum of it being super hot all the
Yeah.
time. And so for me, it was 40 degrees this morning, and I'm like, no, that's not why I live here.
I know. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
just to introduce Carrie again, we are going to be talking a little bit about personal branding and storytelling and how we can connect with other people and kind of give our message out there. To reintroduce Carrie, she is an author and she is a coach and a photographer and all sorts of awesome things. So, Carrie, if you want to introduce yourself and maybe tell a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll
Sure.
talk about
Absolutely.
other things.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would say my kind of main career has been as a stage director. And
Mhm.
because I've moved around so much, I've, evolved. I like to call that better than reinvention, just because I keep
Yes.
picking things up and taking them with me and, rolling with it. So I feel
Yeah.
like I'm never starting from zero, but I'm always having to do creative problem solving or
Mhm.
maybe work from a distance, which I've been doing for way, way, way before pandemic times. And
Okay.
I started coaching actually right after grad school. I realized that as an artist, I was not prepared at all to run my own business, to represent myself, to go out there. People mentioned, yo, you need, get a website. But
Right. Yes.
other than that, we were not really prepared from a business standpoint to be our own business, to represent ourselves, to be able to articulate our work and our goals. And so I started doing personal branding workshops. And then when we were living in Madrid a few years ago, I was hired to teach a personal branding class to their master actors. And after that, I just started thinking, you know, this is so important. I'm going to, whether the schools are going to offer it or not, I'm going to offer it as a service. And then that evolved into me writing this book, which is called Origin Story. And it focuses on controlling your self-narrative and putting your message out there, discovering what your instincts and intuitions are, clearing away some of the noise and thinking about the detours that we've had along the way. Some of which, you know, we've picked up these great skills and techniques for helping us, or maybe prepared us to do a crazy job that intersects several of our interests, right? And so here we are today. I'm getting ready to publish the book, and I'm really excited to just keep putting the message out there and getting people to think about how they're talking to themselves and how they're talking to other people, and, you know, getting rid of some of the stigma around labeling and, you know, selling your work and selling yourself and things like that, and thinking about it more in a connectivity type of a way.
And I think that's a huge part, is a lot of times when people start selling, it comes across as, like, I like to use the term used car salesman, where it's very pushy, it's very aggressive, it's not natural, it's very inorganic. It's like you just kind of I'm going to sell in your face. And it's really not the way to go about it, because one, it's inauthentic. You're going to people and they're like, I don't even know who you are. Like, who are you?
Absolutely.
So so it's like you need to help people. Priority number one is help. You know what I mean? How can I support? How can I help? How can I be an actual genuine human being and show people, like, hey, I'm not just here to see you as a dollar sign. I'm here because I care about you and I want to solve a problem you might have, or help you with something you think you can't achieve, or whatever the solution is.
Absolutely. And thinking about it as I'm offering a service, and it's something that, you know, satisfies me on, you know, probably multiple levels, and I am fulfilling a need in you also, right? So, you know, I totally agree with you. I feel, you know, icky about, you know, oh, I'm gonna like sell things, or, you know, buy a Facebook, you know, advertisement or something, right? You know, clicking that button doesn't feel authentic, right? It feels like so transactional. But when we start talking about who we really are and what we really want and why we do the things that we do when it comes to artists, I mean, all artists are entrepreneurs, right? We cannot stop creating.
100%.
We can't stop. It's something that, you know, I discovered when a play that I was given in a box of memorabilia from my mom's house when we moved this past time across the US. And it was a play that I wrote when I was 10 years old called Little Red Riding Hood Says No to Smoking. Okay, so like in that moment,
it does not.
After decades of denying, you know, thinking, oh, I needed to get a real job, all of the voices in my head, you know, my mom doing the best she could, you know, you need something that's going to support you, and all of this messaging, right? And then I get this other message decades later, you know, almost 40 years later.
You wanted this since you were a kid.
Born this way, right? This is not something that was an accident. It's not something that, like, oh, just one day you decided to be a stage director. Actually, you know, and I carried that narrative with me for a really long time. Like, this was just something that happened to me, you know, that I like fell into, or that I lucked into, or coincidentally happened. Not at all, right? So I started asking people questions about what was their first experience with one of their favorite activities or their career, you know, that spark that moment
Yeah.
of excitement. And it's crazy how people have reacted to that and how they have changed their narrative, right? Because I think, I don't know about you, but especially as a woman, you know, having all of these other competing responsibilities and roles, it was really hard for me to justify sometimes the artist in
Yeah.
me because it's non-traditional and you're always having to explain yourself, you know. So
Yeah.
when I found that artifact, I was like, oh my goodness, this journey started so long ago that I completely forgot. Right.
That's so, I love that
Yeah.
though. That's good. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it is definitely, I think a lot of people can relate, if they have competing responsibilities, especially, parents or, people who are trying to juggle whether they want to change their, like, I've seen people struggle with a few things with multiple responsibilities, jobs, life, caregiving, whatever, it is. And then I've also seen people that can't make the decision, okay, I know this is a safe job, but then this is a job I'm passionate about, and they don't want to make the leap because it scares them, because there's a security with something that, this is safe. I've done this. I've experienced, like, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, I know what this is. I'm comfortable.
yeah,
And being an entrepreneur is not comfortable at all. Ever. Nothing about
no,
it is comfortable.
no,
And there's never, like, anybody that tells you after a certain point that it becomes comfortable. I think they're lying, or they just haven't, they stopped pushing themselves to
yeah,
get to the, what's next kind of thing.
yeah,
So that is tough. Yeah.
absolutely. And it brings on imposter syndrome, right? Because, you know, we
Yes.
have this a lot of times, like I was a temp, right, for a lot of years. I went that route, and that was an approved job. People understood when you were like an executive assistant, right? Because that was
Yes.
like a 9 to 5 job. They understood that you know, the basics of it. They didn't really understand what you did, but you know, it's like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was a job that was not confusing, not complicated,
Yeah.
right? And so when you then move into something that has a non-traditional schedule, a non-traditional, I mean, you know, art scares the heck out of people, right?
Yeah.
If
It
they're not
does. It really does. Yeah.
yeah. So when you're thinking about like, should I do this other thing that number one, I have doubts, my own doubts of myself, and then I'm hearing everyone else say, "Oh, you can't make a living doing that," or "You can't." You know, there's so much
Yeah.
messaging out there, especially from you know, my generation. You know, the baby
Right.
boomers were bringing us up to be very independent and to have that secure job, and it meant something different to them than than it means to us. Like the world has changed so much, right?
A lot. Yeah, very much so. And it is hard because when you are an entrepreneur, especially a solopreneur, which is a term I just heard recently, a solopreneur,
Yeah.
it's one of those that you have to be your own cheerleader.
Yeah.
And if you have the whole world going, that's not a good idea, that's not very smart, why are you doing this? You could do something better.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. You want to think about that some more? You're already doing it.
Yep.
You're already doing it. You don't need any assistance. Like,
Right.
please don't help me. So that's why I very much like community, because you surround yourself with other entrepreneurs, other artists, other, actors, or, whoever, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that are in the same boat. That's like, hey, just keep going.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, we're here to help you. We can help you troubleshoot. We can help you, whatever questions you have. And then you start to feel a little less crazy. Like, oh, okay,
Absolutely.
maybe this isn't like so nuts. And one of my favorite things that I see, and it's everywhere, is instead of thinking about what can go wrong, think about what can go right.
Right. Right.
And if you start to change it to that, then you start to go the direction of, oh, I can do this. Like, this isn't crazy. This is great, and the positivity kind of gets you out of that imposter syndrome and that, like, terror.
Right.
The fear.
Yeah. No, I love
So,
yeah, I absolutely love that you brought community into it. The book is broken into 3 sections. The first one is the parts and pieces of your story, how to write a good story, how to tell a good story, right?
right.
The second is exercises and helping you discover if you're stuck with some of these elements. But the third one
Right.
is connecting,
Yes.
And that is all about community. And, you know, so if you can get yourself to a place where you're not thinking about like necessarily selling your work or selling yourself, but you can think about reaching out and connecting to like-minded people, right? That's the message. That's the authentic part of the connection that I'm really encouraging, right? So whether I'm someone who, okay, so right now I have a job where I'm a theater professor at a bakery. What?
Okay.
What? What? So
I'm hanging in there.
So the bakery was set up by a Jesuit priest who started a fellowship program for retired military veterans, spouses, and caregivers. And they use the bakery as a model for small business to train them and educate them in being an entrepreneur. And I teach a storytelling class for them, right? So like,
I love that.
Yeah. So all of these things. So I went to a Jesuit college. I am a military spouse and a theater professional, right? So you can't predict that all of these things would happen. But I often don't present all of these parts of myself, right? Sometimes, you know, if you're a mother, you don't necessarily share that. If you're a military spouse, you don't necessarily share that. And I have just gotten to a point where I'm like, you know what? I need my people. I need my community. And if you don't support one of these very important pieces of who I am, then that's a way of kind of clearing out the sawdust, right? Because you're saying, this is who I am. And if you're getting that reaction of like, well, I'm not sure about that, then, well, maybe we don't need to continue the conversation, right?
Maybe we don't connect the way I hope we would.
But at the same time, you're attracting all of these people who understand your life from all of these different angles, right? And so what I really encourage people to do is to think about those adjectives that you're using to describe yourself and to think about the full picture of your life. Because if there's one thing I've learned, and I'm not crazy about being on camera, I'm not crazy about being, you know, in front. That's why I'm a director. I like to be behind. But you can't separate it, right? With social media, like you have to get to a place where you're okay with the personal and the professional. You know, maybe not everything, right?
Yeah.
You're not
You
necessarily.
don't have to dance.
Right. Right. But I have connected with so many interesting people who have, you know, there's a whole military spouse artist community. You know, and we might all do different kinds of art, but we have one thing in common that we really understand, that kind of moving every few years and starting over.
It is a complete lifestyle, because I have several friends that have military husbands or wives, sometimes both of them are in the military, and it is, I mean, it is an entire commitment. You know what I mean? So I thank you and your husband and everybody, you know, for everything that you guys do, because it's very important.
So, you know, but if I hadn't have shared that, if I'd really just kept the theater part of that separate, then I start to feel like almost like leading a double life, or like, you know, that I'm kind of hiding a part of that. Once you start opening up and just being like, hey, this is what's going on, you know, I got a crazy house of multiple children. I got, you know, moving every couple of years, and I'm just, you know, right. And then it was really interesting, because then other people really started showing up to have that conversation. And now I have that community that you're talking about, and that network that I can speak to different people about different aspects of my life, and they understand it in a way. You know, there's not just one person who understands all of the pieces and parts, obviously. It's a community, right?
I think a big part of it too is, I think especially when people first start being on like any social media or advertising, or however you want to word it, I think a lot of times people feel like they have to please everybody. And so they don't share certain parts of their life because they worry a part of an audience won't resonate with it, or they won't agree with it, or whatever word you want to use. And so then they say, well, I'm just going to be as plain Jane as possible, because then everyone will like me, and it's going to be amazing. And what ends up happening is the opposite, where no one wants to be around. Like, I'm a very, like, I like being silly and goofy on camera. I have no problem with that. That's fun for me. Like, it's fun. That's a lot for some people. And they're like, maybe not my maybe not my jam, maybe not my, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's a little too silly,
Yeah.
right? That's who I am, you know? So at the end of the day, I could be very, you know, I'm professional and I'm, you know, like, you know, do I know how to do that? Yes, of course. But at the same time, I want to be friendly. I want to be relatable. I want to be, you know,
Yeah.
like, hey, you could approach me and talk to me and not so stern. And, you know, that's just not who I am. So it's important to sometimes, you know, be, like you said, be honest. I didn't realize, this is just an example. Years ago when I worked at a home healthcare agency and I scheduled people for home health. I was in medical before. I was in administrative medical. That was my background before I started this business. And I had brought up that I play violin. And literally everyone in the room went, "What? You've never once talked about that." Like we had no idea. And they made a big deal. We had no idea. And I looked and I'm like, I haven't mentioned that. Never dawned on me to talk about it just
Yeah.
because it wasn't something that kind of like came up until that point, right? But everyone was like, "That's great. We had no idea, blah, blah, blah." And I thought, well, that's so funny. You know what I mean? But it's a good example of all the people that were musicians in that room decided to share, "Oh, I also play an instrument," or I sang, or whatever music background they had.
Right.
And I thought, oh, I should do that more.
Yeah, no, and you know what's
Yeah.
super interesting? I talk to a lot of HR people about this too, and the fact that we can people to, you know, get along and create a community and have those relationships, because we do kind of, you know, put up those walls sometimes and thinking about like what's professionalism, right?
Yes.
I have a good example, which is I always ask people to define themselves or to pick 3 adjectives to work with. You can always change your mind later, you know, this is not permanent.
Yeah.
But to pick 3 adjectives. And what I found really interesting about that for me is that I have for a long time worked multiple jobs where I was like in an office during the day, and then I would go do theater at night, you know, and the requirements for, you know, what you're wearing, how you're speaking, all of these, you know, a little bit of code switching in between these cultures, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I would get kind of stressed out about, you know, what to wear for an interview. And then, you know, I would go for an interview for a directing job, for example, and I had a really hard time because I felt like these were such different worlds. And when I started to use these 3 adjectives, so mine are quirky, collaborative, and creative. Like those are my 3 that I'm working with right now. Well, when I go into my closet now, when I'm thinking about, you know, what I'm going to wear, quirky always comes to the forefront. And I'm like, you know what, if I can't bring a little bit of that into my wardrobe, right? So it's just a small decision, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's a good example of how we don't have to be separate entities, right?
Yeah.
I call it, so I have a term, a lot of people use multi-hyphenate, right? So you might work in different areas. For theater, it might be you're a director, playwright, choreographer, you know, right? But I say it's a chameleon, right?
Yeah.
Because
very much.
You cannot think and focus in multiple areas. You know, we can talk about multitasking all day, right? But when you're,
I think it's not good to multitask. So,
but like when I'm a mom, when I'm you know, with my kids, I'm still a director, you know, and when I'm in the classroom teaching, I'm still a director. And I'm like, why am I not taking that attitude in my life in general? It's so much less stressful to like really think about those qualities and the values that you have or that you want to have, that you want other people to respond to, and focus there, right? More so than, you know, am I wearing a suit to this interview? Heck no, I'm wearing some color. I'm wearing some, you know, it's going to be, so it's a small detail and a small example, but I think when you can articulate these qualities that are important to you, then you're going to start seeing that reflective, and it can change your living environment, your wardrobe, all kinds of things in your life.
I do very much. I appreciate what you're saying, because when you know, there's a lot of very strict dress codes and things like that when you work in offices, right? And so a lot of times the best you can do is maybe like glasses, your glasses color, your earrings, your necklace. You might be able to like have a little bit of you, you know what I mean? Once I started Crafter, I've bought, you know, I've bought all sorts of things, and I'm starting to decorate my house. Now, a little bit fun fact. my husband, when I was pitching him, not pitching him, but I was telling him my business idea, I was like, this is what it's going to be, and making custom artwork, and it's going to be amazing. And I don't think he really understood what I was trying to get at
Yeah.
initially. And so now that the house is starting to look really awesome, he's like, I love this. And I'm like, see?
Yeah, right? Because you're bringing it
So,
in, like your life, your personal and your professional be
yeah.
combined,
Yeah.
right? And you're not, I think we put in so much effort into, being appropriate and being, and this is part of these, limited narratives that I'm trying to
Yeah.
clear away, like that you shouldn't be
Yeah.
like this or you should be like this. If
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but if you've seen any of the professional talks, I mean, I'm watching ambassadors give talks in their tennis shoes and their suits.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
a change in the attitude about how I'm representing myself and what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And not that you need to necessarily be a rebel and totally break all of the rules,
Right.
but that
Right.
you can still
Right.
be yourself,
Try to,
right?
yeah, and not hide who you truly are, or like who you are in the fear that people will say that's wrong, or like everyone has amazing personalities in their own way, and to shy that away or to stifle it is like, you don't want people to have to feel like that or be like that. You want them to have their personality shine, because you're right, it starts to open doors and connect you with people that are great people, and you're like, oh cool, let's be friends, let's connect, and that's the best part.
Well, and I think, again, it helps with imposter syndrome, because if you have these three words that you're holding on to, and you're trying to make a decision, and you let this become part of your regular decision making,
Mm-hmm.
you've already thought through this, right? So you don't have to have a big conversation with yourself every time you need to make a decision. You're like, oh no, quirky is important to me. We're keeping
Yeah,
right?
that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
it. So from your experience, we've talked a little bit, I'm trying to recap a little bit now. We've talked about kind of your personal branding. So in terms of storytelling, we kind of touched base a little bit on that, but let's talk a little more. So if you focus a lot, say internally, say, okay, here's my personal branding, here are my 3 adjectives, who I am as a person, this is how I'm going to help myself navigate through how I'm going to present myself to the world. But then explaining that to other people, because like you said, you had that one example of a bakery with, what was it again? The
Me teaching at being a
yeah,
professor at a bakery.
the theater professor at a bakery.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a title, that's a hook right there. You should just start with that hook.
Absolutely.
But storytelling, I think, is really important. I had, and I'll have to tag who the class I took, but there was one where it said it's a really easy formula. You if you're going to tell your story, you can tell about, what was it, a struggle? What's the struggle? What's the search? And what's the solution? And I'll tag them because I forget what the name. And I made it really easy to say, this is how you blueprint stories. Struggle, search, solution. And if you write those down, you can express, okay, what was the struggle in any situation? Like what was, and what was, how did they search to, like, what was the hardship, or what was the search, or what was the troubleshooting, or however you want to word it.
Yeah.
And then at the end, what do they get from it? How was the solution? How did it get better? How did they get to where they wanted to go?
Yeah.
And so that's a really good, like, breakdown. So I was just curious what you use for your storytelling when you're trying to.
Yeah. So there are so many different models. I use kind of a very traditional, like very historic. There's a lot of different ways. There's Dan Harmon's story circle, which is very much very similar to what you're talking about. You go search, find, and change. That kind of idea. Yeah. Origin story starts a little bit before that, because what I'm looking at is that spark, that first moment, or how we are connecting the dots. So I would just change what you said to, this is where I was, this is where I am, and this is where I'm going. Okay, because my idea, my focus really is to help people achieve future goals.
Yes.
And whether they know what those specific goals are or not, it could just be an uncomfortable feeling of like something's not right, or something's missing, or you have that day job, or what I call the side hustle, because if
Yeah.
we're artists, everything else is a side hustle, right?
Right.
But you might have a bit of a conflict between these two careers or jobs, right? So what I'm helping people to do is to think back about, what were they excited about? What are some activities? What are some things that really sparked them? Or if they're not sure, for example, if you have been an artist for a couple of decades, but you're still having those doubts, start thinking about taking it back. And I'm not talking about just childhood memories. I'm talking about core memories, right? And those can happen at any time. Some people don't pick up a paintbrush until they have retired from their first job, right?
Yeah.
So it's about thinking about those moments of discovery and excitement, and really thinking about the why behind the future goal. So what I mean by that is, as a director, I want to keep directing, and I've got some big ideas about the future, right? But in order to help me get there, I personally I'm all about positive thinking, but I needed something like some hard evidence to help me get there, to overcome imposter syndrome, to overcome these doubts that I have about, am I on the right path? Is this really what I want? How do I get to all those voices to go away and leave me alone?
Right.
For me, that was going back and looking at how I have consistently shown up as a theater artist. From the time that I was very small, writing plays, being in shows. In high school, I was writing. What I didn't know was I was actually directing plays that I wrote about teenage issues, drug and alcohol abuse, all that stuff, just connecting these dots. And all of a sudden, I have this case for who I really am. Undeniable.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So what I'm doing is I'm helping people take the pieces of this story to use to kind of cherry pick, to curate their story, and to be able to communicate, and whether you want to use that information for social media content, whether you want to use it for a TED Talk, whether you want to use it for, the classes that you're teaching, or for interviews or conversations, right? But this is all material that you have that's uniquely yours. It's totally authentic. And once you access it, because, when's the last time you thought about what you want to be when you grow up?
Right.
College, maybe, right? That we had a decision, that we actually had time. We had people questioning us and asking, what do you really want to do? Who do you want to be? Right? And so a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my friends, it seems like we're all getting to a point where we've checked some boxes. Things still aren't working right. Right? We still are like, we still haven't achieved some of our goals. And it's time to switch, right? Which means like starting your own business, or, or like less time at the side hustle, more time with the art, these kinds of decisions. And in order to do that, the world that we live in, it's all about stories and storytelling. And, sure, it's great. Go make social media content. Of what?
Yeah.
Right? So if you have,
when you had said earlier that, I love motivational quotes, but I needed something a little bit more, that resonates with me, just because there's so many times I love me a good inspirational quote. I love when those like pep talk videos where they're like, good, you could do it, and they're all amped and I'm hyped and I'm like, yes, and that's good, but it's also afterward you almost have this like, this is amazing, and then, okay, now what do I do? But show me how, like, how do I do it, so that I can appreciate very much when you say that.
So if you identify, maybe you are like me, I am an artist who also loves teaching, right? So my social media content might come from a place of, I'm going to teach you something, right? But what's the content? Okay, now I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at this evidence of what I'm good at, what people have me to do, what
Mhm.
my interests are, what are some of these things that I have forgotten about, you know, because we put things on the shelf and we forget to take them back
Yeah.
off, and you know, it's time to like dust them off and be like, oh, hello,
Right.
old friend, photography, you know,
Yeah.
let's see how we can weave this into some social media content or take a new
Mhm.
class and get
Yeah.
inspired, right?
Absolutely.
So it's kind of a complicated, windy answer to your question of discovering your story,
Mhm.
discovering your origins, but also discovering yourself in that process, and then
Right.
setting those future goals about what you want to achieve and where you want to take all of this, because you're on a journey,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I believe that we cannot predict the future. We
Yeah.
can only prepare for it,
Yeah.
right? And
100%.
I think the only way to prepare is to follow your instincts and intuition,
Mhm.
because we can't predict, right?
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
never have predicted when I was a young adult. I could never have predicted that I would be a theater professor in a bakery, right? The world has,
Yeah, that's a new one for me.
right?
Yeah.
But that's how the world works. And I guarantee you that anyone who's listening to this, yourself,
Mhm.
you have taken on jobs or found yourself doing things that you never ever would have predicted, you know,
Right.
10, 20, 30
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
So Weiss, you know, okay, when I talk about the future goal, I'm talking about the ideas and like the kind of work that you want to do. Maybe not necessarily really super tangible. In 10 years, I'm going to
Yes.
XYZ. I've given
Right.
up thinking about that because, oh my gosh, let's think about 10 years ago and where we are now, right? Here we are having a conversation on a little device,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Well, I like to tell people, and it's very true now that we're talking about this, it's true both on a business and a personal level. But I like to tell people that business is fluid, it's not fixed.
Yeah.
So there are goals and dreams and ideas that I have. Just ask all my members on Crafter. I literally just emailed them. I said, these are all the things I've been thinking about. However, what do you want to see? What do you want to have? Because I might think this is great. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I also want the community to be happy. So, you know, I got some really interesting feedback and was very thankful for that. And so things are allowed to change. So what you think might be, you know, this is my goal. It's good to have goals and to actually set tangible, like, this is what I'm going to do to get from point A to point B. That's very important.
Yeah.
You want to write that stuff down. And yeah, is it kind of, you know, sometimes it's, you know, oh, I don't want to, people sometimes fight that process, but it's really, really good to do. And so you can write all that down. However, the pathway there don't feel like, you know, they have all those like graphics and stuff. It's not a straight line
No.
like to where you want to go. It's all over the map. It's everywhere. And that's okay. That's normal. I
Yeah.
feel like it's normal.
Yeah. No.
Because I don't think I've met
Yeah.
anybody that's gone from point A to point B and been like, that's what I did. I had it in my mind and my brain, and it's good now. I got there, and it's like, no, 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 no. It's sometimes you kind of have to go the scenic route, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
But you know what the one consistent thing is on that scenic route? I call them detours, by the way. You know what the one consistent piece of that is? It's you,
Yes.
right? It's you and your, again, you know, when we talk about goals, they could be tangible. It could be like, I want to be an artistic director in 5 or 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Or it could
Yeah.
be, I'm going to continue. I have these goals. One of my, not surprisingly, one of my main focuses is social justice, right? Obviously started when I was 10.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of my mission statement is to continue to raise up and amplify marginalized voices, right? So
Okay.
this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
a general goal of mine that's representative of me and my values and my goals.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking for opportunities to do that. I don't
Yes.
know exactly what that looks like. It could
Mm-hmm.
be in collaboration with other artists. It could
Mm-hmm.
be working for a company who also supports these ideas. It could
Right.
be many different ways to satisfy
Right.
that mission and those goals and those values that I have. But it's taken me a
Mm-hmm.
long time to really be able to articulate that,
Right.
right? And to think about the why and the
Mm-hmm.
kind of future interests. And it took me not just my origin story, but really evaluating these detours that have happened in my life and taking a look at past jobs that I've been attracted to and not understood. Like, I majored in public relations as an undergrad. My undergraduate college at the time, now a university, didn't have a theater program, a major or a minor, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I was really drawn to marketing and public relations and, once again, storytelling, right? So I'm looking back and I'm like, oh, here's some more clues. Here's some more ways that I have found to follow my interests, right? Even though to other people that might not seem like a clear picture. I call it a constellation, right? Because you're like adding all these dots, but you have to kind of back up and look and say, oh, right. You know, I was talking to a photographer the other day who told me that, you know, I was walking her through and I was like, well, think about what you did when you were younger. The first time you picked up a camera, the first time, you know, were you on yearbook? Were you, you know, if in high school, were you, and all of a sudden she had all of these memories and she was like, oh my gosh, you know, again, it was a relatively new career for her as far as, you know, that was what she was focusing on exclusively. But when she looked back, she saw that she had been working towards this, you know? So these goals they're what you want to achieve or who you want to be, who you want to be remembered as, or have this, you know, relationship with people, but not necessarily this tangible thing that could set you up to, you know, fail, if you will, which I don't really believe in that word. Because I think that we learn so much when we set goals, you know, even though they weren't achieved in the way that we expected.
And that's it too. You kind of have to embrace the journey of it, because if things don't go right, or if things go sideways, or like you said, not even if it's just the way, not a way you thought you'd get, like how you get there, doesn't make it bad. You know what I mean? You just have to work through that process and say, okay, you know, you can do this, you know, I mean, you just have to, and it might not be the way you expected, but it can be done. So as long as you learn from it, and the next time it won't be so scary, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Because we have these expectations based on what we think we know. But if you haven't experienced it yet, you know, you're probably just seeing someone else's surface level presentation of whatever you're trying to achieve. You're not seeing all the behind the scenes scramble and late nights, right?
Yes, and that's another thing is I've had people say I invite people to lives like this all the time because I enjoy them. That being said, everyone's like, oh, well, it's easy for you. It's easy. And I go, you don't think I get nervous too? I get nervous every time. But for people, if they haven't met me, they're like, oh, she's, you know, and they think it's great. And so social media as a whole, take with a grain of salt. There's a lot of people, you know, that are vying for your attention. They want to show all the happy, all the everything, all the great, wonderful, fantastic.
Yeah.
And they're not showing you. Now, some content creators are fantastic at, they'll show you they're real and it's great or it's fantastic, and then they show bloopers afterwards, and I love those people so much because it makes it relatable. You know, they'll like drop the camera on their face, or they'll, you know, do something bad, and it's like, okay, that's hilarious. You know, you do a reel 10 times. And every time it's like, you know, you're like, oh, I gotta start over, do it again. But they don't see that.
No,
they don't see any of that.
They don't. And that's the authentic part of it, right? How we deal with the ordinary in our very unique way, right? With a sense of humor, or with, you know, maybe you're sarcastic, or, you know, whatever your approach is for getting through it. But no, social media is so complicated, but also, you know, there's a different audience for each of the platforms, and the different there are different expectations there too. It takes a long time to get to know. If you're not comfortable with it, you should just go hang out and find people that you like, because there's probably a reason that you're attracted to that material and their honesty and their authenticity, or their shininess for whatever reason. But this technique of origin story really kind of helps you to ground and find those kernels. Like, what I suggest is that you go out and you look for other examples and try to figure out what you like about their social media or their content or whatever it might be, or their art itself, right? And that then you go back and you look at your own life and you ask yourself questions about how your life is unique and individual, not trying to be like others, because we know that
you don't want to copy them, but you can take the core of what they're doing and make it your own. You know what I mean? So you don't want to copy, but
right, absolutely.
As artists, we don't embrace copycats.
No, exactly. So what I see sometimes is people go out and they look around and they're like, oh, well, if that's working for them, so that's what I'm going to do. And it doesn't come off as authentic because they haven't applied it to their personal life. They haven't applied it to their aesthetic or their interests or, their genuine instincts, right?
Their identity, really. Yeah.
So Origin Story is all about looking inside, not looking outside, not looking at your neighbors, not looking at your colleagues, because I don't know about you, but it's very, very easy to get an imposter syndrome flare up when you go out and look at, who you might consider your colleagues or your contemporaries, right? What they're doing and where they're featured, and did they get featured in this publication or something like that, right? Instead of, what I like to do is look at all of the puzzle pieces, because that's just one surface item on their situation. Whatever your family situation is, your needs, as your financial needs, all of these other decisions that go into making your life work, a partner, right? All of those needs and that balancing, that is something so individual that if you start to try to put yourself, or I'm kind of a what if person, so I'm trying to develop these techniques of what if I hadn't moved all of these times in several years, would I have achieved XYZ, right? And then I'm like, you know what, if I'm gonna think about the what if, then I'm taking away from myself all of the rich experiences I had, so, and you mentioned that before, it's not the looking at the negative, it's looking at the what did I gain?
Yes.
Right? So I try to stay on that side of the coin.
Yes.
What did I gain and what am I taking away? So when I have those moments of like, what if, but they're achieving this, then I think, but I have gained all of these different pieces of my life, and my life would not have been complete. Maybe I wouldn't have 3 kids. Maybe there would be some other things. Each person has made their own decisions. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of those things. It's funny. I relate more, not so much to the what if of the past, but the what ifs of the future is usually what I have to work through as a business owner. As I go, okay, well, what if all this? Okay, back up. You know what I mean? Stop. And you work through and you say, okay, that's when you write everything down. Like I'm a big fan of lists. I make lists for everything to get my brain, because it's all in here and it's rattling around and it's giving me the business. So I put it on paper, you know what I mean? And I go, okay, what am I in control of right now? What can I work on? And then once I know that I'm taking steps towards whatever I'm trying to do, you start to go, okay, I got this. I'm okay.
Well, and for you, and for you in that moment, I would ask you, what are you preparing for? Right?
Yeah.
You have absolutely no idea. Just like the last job you did, or the last, career switch prepared you in some strange way for where you are now. Whether it was just, working in an office and learning how to use Excel spreadsheets, which now you use to run your own home, right?
Yeah.
So you have gained these skills and you have gained this awareness that has supported you to be able to take that risk. Even if it wasn't your main, if it was a side hustle kind of thing, look around and be like, what can I learn while I'm here? Because this job, this business might be preparing you for something else. You just never know. So that's when I go back to that following those instincts, not what you're hearing other people telling you that you should do, right?
Yeah, right. Because you do need to filter through that a lot.
Yes.
A lot of people trying to either, even if they're mean well, a lot of times people mean well when they say stuff like that to you, and they're like they're trying to get you in their bubble of protection.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of like, okay, this is what you should do to be safe and secure, and I know you're good, and then my worry goes down because I know you're good. You know what I mean? And they have good intentions, but at the end of the day, a big thing that I want to say, especially, is if you have a friend or a family member that is starting their own business, or in this situation, writing their own book, or whatever it is, hype that person up. Share their posts, buy their stuff, make them seem like, because we need it.
Yeah.
Every business owner, every time you like, share, buy, any of that, you know what I mean? It means a lot.
Yeah.
It means a lot. And it with all the noise of you shouldn't, or it's bad, or it's whatever, that one like or that one comment or whatever it is, it's like, all right, I got this, I can do it. So just that's a big thing I want to throw out there, because I have a lot of friends that have started businesses, and like I said, you kind of have to be your own cheerleader and be okay with that, because you think, well, I have all these friends and family and everyone's gonna just hype me up, and then when it doesn't happen, you go,
yeah, well,
ooh,
yeah, because everyone has their own priorities, and they see you, and especially if they think you're doing well, then you have to work even harder, right? Because they're like, oh, they don't need my attention, they don't
need my help, it's like, please.
Yeah, I like what you were bringing up, though, because I call that bad advice when people are trying to be helpful. But you have to remember that they're doing it from their own perspective with their own priorities, which are not yours, And if you've taken the time to evaluate, no, family time is really important, so I'm going to limit my working hours to this, right? And then people are like, oh, no, you should be open on the weekends, or, whatever the advice is. It doesn't apply to you because they're speaking from their own personal situation. The best thing I think someone can do is just say, how can I help you? How can I support you? Not this is what you should be doing, right? Because
100%.
It's not, the worlds are different, even though they might seem similar, right?
Right, absolutely. And it is good, because people think it's surprising, because people think, oh, there's no way I can support my friend's business. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help. But then they don't ask. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, if you're not going to ask, like, that's fine. And so I've done, every once in a while, I'll put a post up, and it's like, here are completely free ways to support business, right? You don't even have to buy anything.
Yeah.
Just kind words, word of mouth. We've gotten so much business just from word of mouth. Someone buys something, they show it to their friends. Isn't this awesome? Isn't this cute? I love this. Wonderful. And their happiness, they go, oh, I want that too. You know what I mean? And then we get another customer, which is wonderful. Yeah. And so people downplay, like, oh, how could I possibly help someone starting their business? And they get overwhelmed with it. And it's like, you don't have to get overwhelmed. There's just either ask or do something. Just tell someone about the business. Or there's lots of small stuff you can do.
Well, I think
you can help them be.
It's interesting because I think there's some generational tell signs, right? And I definitely see it with a lot of my friends and colleagues that there's a lot of lurking going on, right? That we're like not wanting to get into the conversations or the controversy. So even clicking the like button feels dangerous sometimes. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So I think if we could like destigmatize that a little bit and just say, hey, make a mistake if you accidentally put the sad face or the laugh emoji instead of what you mean, just do it, go for it, because that interaction is so helpful. But those of us who have been working on social media, we understand that we need that interaction for the news to travel, right?
Right.
So
exactly.
I've started resorting to like email, some, texting and kind of email chains, and please pass this on, and like direct asks, because I've found that that's really, people will respond, but they kind of need to know what, have a specific ask.
Yes. Yeah. it's so funny because it's like sometimes, yeah, you just have to ask sometimes, and that's a big part of something that I think I like to share with people a lot, and I think it makes people uncomfortable because of the fear of rejection. So
Yeah.
if they have, I tell people all the time, I've gotten full-blown jobs from emailing companies going, I'd really like to work with you. Here's my skill set. Do you have something for me? And when I told people I did it, I was 18, 17, 18 when I did that. And people are like, you did what? Like they were so confused. Like you just emailed them? And I'm like, yeah. And I got a job. And they're like, what? It was just like completely didn't make sense to them in their brain.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to ask.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
You
also
know?
another side is the fact that people are out there and they are listening, and you'll know because when you have conversations with people, months later. So
Yeah.
when I was overseas, I was writing a blog. When we were in Italy, it was more food and culture related, but in Madrid, for example, we were during the pandemic, we were in our apartment for 7 weeks and did not leave. Right. And so I was blogging all the time. And when we came back to the United States, and people didn't, they weren't necessarily like super chatty about it, but when we came back, they were like, oh my gosh, I read every word. They were really there, they were really present, and people are paying attention. And it
I love
doesn't
that.
take, right? So, for that one like you get, just think that there's probably, tens, maybe hundreds of people who have seen your content, and you might have really lifted somebody's day. You might have
Yeah.
really connected with someone that
Right.
you won't know about until months or even
Way
years down the
later.
line, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to have some
Well, they do tell you too, if you're marketing online that you have to, gosh, I don't even remember how many times your face has to show up before people will engage with you.
yeah.
You know what I mean? There's like a crazy number. I was shocked when I heard it. It was like it was way more times than I thought. So, yeah, you just have to keep showing up and being people's
Yeah.
friends and hey, I'm here, anytime you want to talk, that kind of thing. So
Yeah. And especially
yeah.
if you haven't been super active. I just started one of my platforms, the numbers are super low, but you know
Right.
what? It's like a couple each week. And
Yeah.
that's how it starts, is just
Yeah.
little by little, just testing the waters and
Yeah.
figuring out how that environment works, but not being
Yeah.
afraid to just put something up and have a little bit of fun with it in your own way, right?
Yes.
I'm not a super silly person online either, but I do have fun with the content and making little
I love
videos.
doing, yeah, I love doing funny stuff just because I like to joke. That's who I am as a person. So it's easier for me to joke than it is to, of course you have to make content that people take seriously too.
Sure.
But for, and I try to tell people if you're, super introverted, do not copy me because you're going to feel weird. It's not going to be you.
Yeah.
People want to get to know you. They don't, like there's enough people being silly,
So for me,
so
I am an introvert. I'm like one of those borderline people, but I definitely have some strong introvert tendencies.
yeah.
And one of the things that I found that I really enjoy is making like kind of a little music video. I almost always use music, upbeat of some
Yeah,
sort. So
yeah.
I'm not really speaking, and
Yeah.
that might not be as engaging, for the platforms, but it's still getting the message out and people are still
Yeah.
responding to it, right? So you don't have to
Yeah.
necessarily, if you're not comfortable with this public speaking part of it, or
Yeah.
you don't want to show your face, there's
Yeah.
so many different ways of getting around it. I know a friend of mine who's an artist, they do like little tutorials, and you always kind of see just their hand and the work.
Yeah. No, those are
Still,
great.
yes,
Yeah, those are great.
engaging, right?
Also, if you use music, and I'm sure you may probably most people I think would know this maybe already, but I'll talk about it anyway. There's trending audio.
Yeah.
So if you're using trending audio, I know on Instagram, you can check the audio and it has this little arrow that points like it's going up. If you pick that audio and you put it onto whatever you're doing, whether it's your drawing or your face, or if you can have text pop up, like captions, explaining your point, use the trending audio, and that'll help your reach a lot.
Yeah.
So music is great.
I've also just seen a trend because reels are so popular right now that people are just putting a photo with some music and a little bit of text.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just to get some attention. And Yeah, so there's a lot of options for your personality type
Yeah.
and how you
100%.
are
Yeah.
sharing that
Yeah.
that message. But think about the why. Like think about the people that you wanna connect with, because your artistry is not the only part of you that needs to be represented, right?
100%.
If you
Yeah.
want to share some cooking tips, or if you want to share some parenting tips, or if you
Mhm.
want to go outside and try your hand at a new type of art, for example, and
Yeah.
take your fan club with you while you do
Yeah.
that, you're still
Yeah.
developing that relationship. And other
Yeah.
things to talk about when they are like, hey, how about that art? I'd like to
Yeah.
buy some of that because I really like you as a person, right?
Yeah.
We
As
know
a
that
whole
that sells,
person. Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I've had a fantastic time talking with you.
Thank you. Me
Is there
too.
anything else you wanted to share? Maybe mention a book title one more time before we
Sure.
wrap up, and
Yeah.
then yeah.
So, Origin Story will be published at the end of, well, in the spring, late spring, like May, June. But I'm collecting a waiting list for that, but I'm also offering Origin Story coaching sessions, and I do personal branding and also public speaking. So if you are an introvert, I'm fantastic at helping you get over that,
Yes.
to
Okay.
bolster your confidence and get online. Most of that you can see in the storefront on Spousely, which is
Okay.
SPOUSE-LY, Spousely.
Okay.
It's a military spouse supported website.
Awesome.
And so some of the proceeds actually go to helping the military spouse community. And so, yeah, just connect with me if you have questions or are interested in discovering your story or developing content. This is one of my great joys right now, and an area that I'm super excited to help people discover.
Well, I really very much appreciate you meeting with me today. I will be linking your Instagram onto this and also sharing it on YouTube. So if people want to watch the replay, they're able to. And yeah, I just really appreciate your time. Thanks
Thank
so
you
much
so
for being here.
much.
And for everyone watching, thank you so much. If you have any questions for me or for Carrie, please let me know. And I hope you all have a fantastic day.
And go buy some art.
Oh, and go buy some art on Crafter. Bye.